Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Just getting to this now. The Springbok alignment camp was named yesterday. Of course, yesterday was a tough day with Cornel Hendricks passing. I was rather consumed with that yesterday and everything around it. So I didn't get to it yesterday like most other people, but I want to do something a bit differently in looking at the squad. I thought what we do, rather than look at about who's made it, there's some headlines about who's been admitted and who's not there. And some interesting ones, and I thought let's rather have a look at who's not there from the last alignment camp, and I think that'll answer a lot of questions and look at just why those players aren't there. I think if you look at it, these alignment camps, you must understand, aren't Springbok selections. They a chance for the Springbok coaches to have a look at the players, to work with them and to get to know them and to communicate what they think the players need to do better. It's obvious that they've been watching them, and that comes through quite quickly in the selection of the guys, and it's a wide net. It's anybody that the Boks will be looking at throughout the year. So it doesn't mean you're not in the Springbok side over there, although it'll be much harder to get in if you weren't invited to one of the alignment camps. And if you were and you dropped out for the second one, then there's probably a reason for that. And I think we'll look at that, some of those players who dropped out, and then we'll look at the squad that was selected. I think part of it is, a lot of this is Rassie knows who he wants already, and I think as part of it's just to sometimes challenge the players, sometimes give them tasks that they want them to do, parts of their game they need to improve, and sometimes just to introduce them to the system. There's been a lot said about the Varsity Cup players that were, but Sampie Swiggers was there last year and never got selected, and I think that's Rassie's way of showing Varsity Cup players that if you do well, you can be part of the system, and just to show other Varsity Cup players that it's not out of your reach. So while all the headlines have been about the Varsity Cup players that have been picked, I don't think it means too much in the bigger scheme of things. Of course, a lot of the focus has been on the UCT winger Nototokozo Makaza, who's been brilliant in the Varsity Cup, but I think has only really been sort of invited to, and there's nothing against him, but it's not really a shock call-up. It's more really an invite so that he can experience the Springbok culture, etc., and maybe inspire him to greater heights. The other, of course, shock was Evan Roos's exclusion there, and to me the one nobody picked up was Johan Grobbelaar not being in the initial squad as well, but we'll get to all those now. I think we're first going to look at those players that dropped out from the first time, because there's 54 players called up this time. I think it was 86 in the first one, so quite a few players dropped out in the meantime, but let's have a look at them first. Let's have a look at those players left out. The first one is Ethan Bester. He's the Sharks hooker youngster, one for the future, and that's why he was invited the first time. I don't think anybody thinks he's close to the Boks squad just yet. Pepsi Buthelezi, that's not too much of a surprise. He's always been on the fringes. I think with Vincent Chituka coming into the camp now, he probably lost out for that. Joseph Dweba hasn't obviously played for a while and has also struggled to get regular game time at the Stormers. Evan Roos is the obvious big one that's been left out, and I'm not quite sure the reason for that. I can only think maybe there's a reason why Rassie wants to have the other players there. It doesn't mean that he's had a fallout with Rassie, although I suppose that's the natural thing that everybody thinks about. But he's quite a shock, obviously. Andre Hichoventa, I think there weren't many hookers, if you think Bongi and Malcolm were, and Jan Hendrik Wessel, so there weren't many hookers brought into the camp. So it's hard to read that one. But Andre Hichoventa is probably one for the future, been on the outside. Ron Venter struggled with the Lions form this season, has had injury problems, has got a Springbok cap, so I don't think he's out of the picture. Just probably not for this one. I think we will see him at some point in the international series. The one that intrigues me is Johan Grobbelaar, because I don't see his name there, and he's one who's been performing quite admirably and seems to be very much the Springbok setup anyway. Now, so it makes me wonder if some of this is not a bit more specific to go towards the Rugby Championship, some of these selections. Rassie hasn't really shared with us the reasons why some of these players aren't there, But I can't think Johan Krobler wouldn't be there. He was part of the BOK plans all season last season, so and he hasn't really seen a dip in form. So that's an interesting one. Also for me, same as Russ, both have been performing pretty well. So there's obviously reasons behind it, and we'll have to wait to hear. Selampilo Gumede, I think that's one of the tragedies of the season. He hasn't had much game time under Jake White, and I know there's a bit of unhappiness around that, but Cameron Honeycomb has been playing well, has been injured, and Jake has preferred guys like Johannes Kirsten, etc. So not sure what's going on there. We'll try and find out a bit more about that. Reinhard Ludwig, definitely one for the future. Has had a taste of it, still young, can play lock and flank, and he's definitely one they're looking at the future. Akka van der Merwe, well, that's another one. They didn't select many hookers. You couldn't say Akka's form is down, so I'm not quite sure on that one. But I suppose at some point you just have to have so many players, and I'm sure there's reasons for that. Joe van Heerden, also another one for the future. Former SA Under-20 captain, has been playing well for the Bulls, and Lorenzo Julius, also one for the future out of that group. The next group of players who were left out of the alignment camp, well, Paul de Vet, I think with the amount of scrum halves around, somebody was going to lose out as well. Not quite surprised at that one. Suleiman Hartzenberg, who gets his 50th cap for the Stormers this weekend, he's definitely one for the future, and he'll definitely be back. Henke van Wyk's been struggling with injuries, and the Lions' form, I'm sure that's probably played a part. It's interesting to see that, because I think he is on the fringes the whole time. David Creel's the one nobody seems to understand, performs admirably at URC level, and for the Bulls, one of their stars all the time, but never seems to get the recognition. Well, there's a lot of competition in the area, so I suppose sometimes one player's going to lose out. Maybe there's a part of his game that we don't know about, that Rossi and them feel that he needs to improve. Sebastian de Klerk, I think, was always on the fringes. I didn't actually think he was in the BOK frame, but he has been performing well, and certainly isn't out of the picture totally, but he would lose out when it comes to some of the more experienced wingers, especially those coming back from overseas. Emrose Papi is another one who's had a really good couple of seasons for the Bulls. Really is playing well. They're number one starting scrum half. But I guess with the amount of scrum halves that the Boks have at the moment, there's only space for so many, and somebody has to lose. And Frankie Horn, unfortunately, is injured, so I think that's probably why he wasn't named as part of the injured players. But that's probably the reason why he also didn't make it as well. Although he was also on the fringes, I suppose, and there's only so many loose forwards you can pick. Injured players: Trevor Niakani, Ben Jason Dixon, Dion Fourie, Frans Malherbe, and Elric Lowe. I think they all would have been there had there not been injuries to them as well. So those are the guys who missed out on the alignment camp that were in the first one. Now also one that just to look at who was invited. Now there's been a lot of focus on this. Of course, the props, a bunch of props there, and I've included guys in this list, by the way, that can play more than one position. I haven't put them down as utilities, so I think they're probably going to play. Nathan Forshare has been pretty good the whole season for the Stormers. Vincent Koch is there. Wilco Lowe has been probably the standout tight head for the season, and then Tutuku Machunas had a great season. Oxenchek you can't leave out. Gerard Steenekamp the same. Jan Hendrik Wessels was part of the camp last year, and is certainly one for the future. And Asanatin Tlabakanye, I reckon we're going to probably see him make his debut somewhere in one of the tests this year. Interesting, only one specialist hooker. Jan Hendrik Wessels is the other guy, and of course Malcolm Marks is invited to the virtual camp with the overseas players. So that was interesting, not going with too many hookers into this one. The locks, pretty interesting. The stalwarts are there. Evan Etzebeth, Ron Nokia played most of the season last season. Salman Marat is captain the Boks as well. And then Kobus Wesse, who's certainly been the signing of the season in the local URC, has played very well for the Bulls, and it's good to see him there with his brother. And I reckon we're definitely going to see him make a debut this year for the Springboks. Then the loose forwards here, of course, this is mostly local based players. Jasper Wiese is obviously back in South Africa, and that's why he's there. But Siya Kolisi is always expected to be there. I think Marco van Staden and Cameron Honeycomb were probably going to be there anyway. Cameron Honeycomb is probably going to play a big part of the season for Russi's team. Renzo du Plessis has been the breakout star in the Currie Cup last year, and really has carried on in the UFC. And interesting, he doesn't get a starting place in the Lions the entire time, but obviously Russi rates him very highly. That's why he's there, especially ahead of some of the other players, JC Pretorius, Jared Keynes, those guys who play ahead of him at the Lions. And then Vincent Chutuka has now qualified. He's got his passport for South Africa, and he's there. Although he's got the most line-out steals in this year's URC, so he could be a line-out option for the Springboks as well. But it's good to see him there. Not too many number 7 options there, so it's interesting. Might see maybe we're thinking about Ruan Nokia, who's played 7 for the Bulls a couple of times now. Maybe he'll be there. Just 3 9s on this list. Of course, all 3 played for the Springboks last season, so no surprises there. And we already handled those that didn't make it from the last alignment camp. Looking at the Flavs, no surprises there. Sasha Feinberg Mngomezulu, probably with his Stormers season so far, since returning from injury, is in the driver's seat on that one. But certainly no surprises at Flavs. And then in look at the midfielders, only 3 midfielders picked as well. No surprises there either. Lucanio Andre Estes and Ethan Hooker has been part of the squad and definitely one for the future. As we said, Jurenzo Julius is probably going to be there in the future as well. But for now, the only 3 midfielders picked. Part of the reason for this is that there are several players that can play in different positions. Caden Moody can play in the midfield as well. See him and Makazola Mapimpe, Edwin van der Merwe, the wings. And the same with the back 3 as well. Apalele Fassi can play on the wing. Kieran Horn. Willie LaRue is on his way to his 100th cap. David Willemse can play anywhere in the back line. And then, of course, the wild card at the end there is the winger Ntokozo Makaza, excuse my pronunciation, and I think he's just there for the experience and just to maybe inspire him. Maybe we'll see him back in a couple of years' time as well. The other caveat to this is that there is a virtual alignment camp for the overseas players, and you'll see a lot of those players would fit into these positions as well. The forwards there, Jean Augustus, who's had a great season with Northampton Saints, was one of the stars in their win over Leinster in the Champions Cup semi-final. Lourdes Jager, Jean-Luc Dupré is always in the squad somewhere. Peter Steph du Toit, no stranger. Thomas du Toit has had a great season with Bath. Jean Klein, part of the World Cup winning squad. Malcolm Marks would always be there. Franco Mostert as well. Kwaka Smith, RG Snyman. And Magnus van der Merwe has been highly rated by Rassie for quite a while and has had a great season for the Scarlets. And no surprise seeing him there as well. No surprises that the backline players invited to the camp as well. Every one of them is a World Cup winner. Every one of them has been there before, and every one of them is expected to feature at some point in the season. So those are very much a bunch of players there that we know will be part of Russi's plans. So no surprises there at all. So there we have it, guys. That's a look at the BOK alignment camp. As I say, don't read too much into it. It gives you a good indication of who's in Russi's vision, but overall it's not going to really influence the camp, and there's still a number of rounds that players can play themselves in or out of the BOK alignment camp, the BOK camp for the tests. Russi's obviously got a specific plan for the year. He knows which players he wants to get there. He's spoken before about giving a bunch of the younger players, getting them up to 30 tests by the 2027 World Cup, and that's what I think we're going to see against Italy and Georgia in those tests, and probably some of the Rugby Championship tests as well. We're going to see a lot of those players getting game time, a lot of those players and mix and match side, so you won't maybe see so many of the older players featuring. It won't be the full strength Springbok side just yet, because the big thing this year is to develop those players. That's why there's the extra test match against the Barbarians. That's why they're looking at extra games as well. So there's a lot going on there, and if Russia and them get their way, they'll have a lot of that sorted by then. So that's it for this week. Apologies it didn't come out yesterday, but let me know what you think, and let me know what who you think missed out and who you think should have been in the squad. I read them all, the comments, and it's always good chatting to you guys. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button. We'll chat again soon. Cheers.